Welcome to Digital Journeys, the podcast from Bekaert that explores how technology is transforming business optimization. Each episode, we unpack the latest trends, strategies, and innovations that are driving efficiency and growth in today's fast-paced digital landscape. Join us as we navigate the path to smarter, more agile business practices.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jerry Harden, and I'm the product marketing manager at Bekaert. Today, I am joined by Nathan Currie and John Bartz, who are going to be talking about the 6 common mistakes that are made whenever upgrading to a new accounting software. As many of you probably know, upgrading your accounting software is a big step toward efficiency, accuracy, and even better financial management, which is probably the most important thing. But be warned, if you're not careful, what should be a smooth transition can quickly turn into a very costly headache. So before we get started, Nathan, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Nathan Currie here. I'm Sales and Marketing Director for the Sage ERP practice at Bekaert, and happy to be here. I've been in technology for 30 plus years and selling ERP systems for the last 8.
John?
Thanks, Jerry. Hello, everyone. I am the Sage Intacct growth leader here at Bekaert. Been here 3.5 years and a long history of implementation, and on both sides, been a practitioner as well as a consultant. Looking forward to the conversation today.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to have both of you here. These guys have been there, done it, seen it, any kind of mistake that's out there, and how to fix it. So let's go ahead and start with the first step of some of the common mistakes that someone might see. So number one, I guess one of the bigger ones, and this is right out the gate, is not defining clear goals. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think it's easy for folks when they, no one wakes up in the morning and thinks, today I'm going to buy ERP software. Typically, things sort of build up over time. There are shortfalls, and eventually things become cumbersome, especially if you're migrating from one system to another. And so, the common tact, I guess, is for folks to start looking at features, to start looking at, what's the latest and greatest. And what they really should do is focus internally and clearly define, where are we having issues? What's costing us the most time? What are the processes or what's going on in the software that is really costing us money? And I think instead of, focusing on features and what's latest and greatest, it's really more appropriate to take an internal look and to evaluate first where you really are. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I would say as well that to further that understanding of how the ERP solution is going to meet your business goals. So make sure that the business goals align. I think as well, understanding what you want to accomplish. Do you have objectives? Otherwise, you have a rudderless project. And then how do you know when you've succeeded? What are your KPIs going to be? How do you know that you've completed the project? Did you meet the financial and business goals that you set out to? And again, do they align with the overall business plan that the firm or the company has?
So one of the questions I have with this is, a company may have a really good handle on what is its business plan, and Nathan, you talked about features. I think some people can get overwhelmed with the features when trying to find the software, and they don't know what they're looking for necessarily. They know they need to do something, but they just don't know how to choose that right software. How would you help them with that, Nathan?
Well, first and foremost, obviously you want to seek out a professional. I think companies, they believe that a lot of times they believe that their system and their setup and their processes are unique. And a lot of times what we find is that they're actually more similar than they might otherwise realize with other companies. So a consultant, someone who's been doing this a while, certainly is the first place that you want to start. And that consultant will be able to help you to determine, what's the right path. There are a lot of different types of software out there. In addition to that, there are different approaches for the software. What I mean by that is you might have a best of breed approach where you have, core financials at the center, and then it's designed to add on third-party products in order to make a complete holistic system. Or you might have other approaches where the software is trying to be all things for a particular industry. So I think, the first thing I would say, Jerry, is, certainly want to seek out the help of a professional, because there are a lot of options and a lot of different softwares out there. It can become really confusing quickly.
Yeah, for sure. John, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I do, Jerry. And I agree with Nathan. I would add that companies believe they're unique, and I've found it being in different industries and different clients that there are a lot of similarities. I mean, your basic accounting is the same, generally speaking, across the board. What you want to avoid doing is get into a pattern of customization where it really has a diminishing value of return. If you've never done an ERP, or you don't seek a professional, you're probably going to miss out on applying best practices and then try to modify the software and then create a more expensive and less value-based solution. So you want to be very careful there.
It's a great point, John. I think I've seen companies too that think that, we'll just build our own, why can't we just develop that? And they'll take the approach of maybe you're trying to hire a developer or something to build something when, 99.9% of the time by now, someone has solved the problem, right? It's always cheaper to buy versus build for the most part, especially if you're looking at ERP as a whole.
So the number 2 common mistake would be skipping user input. Talk about skipping user input. What have you seen and as far as this being a big mistake? Nathan, that's going to you.
Yeah, we can't stress enough that user buy-in is the most critical thing that you need, because if you don't, the goals are going to be misaligned. You're going to have bad feeling within your users, and not to mention lack of definition, all of the nuance of each process. You have to think about each person's role and the workflow that's attached to each user's role, whether it be AP, AR, purchasing, inventory management, sales, and marketing. I mean, each of these folks certainly are going to want to have input, and ultimately they're the ones that use the system in the end. So they are, to me, are one of the most important things about the process of selection.
John, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I will look at a little bit different perspective. A lot of this comes into play depending on the complexity, the scope of the project, and size of your organization. So if you're looking at a 3-person accounting department, the needs and wants and approaches are going to be different from a large scale implementation that spans multiple divisions, has multiple stakeholders. So let's say it has sales, operations, and multiple business units involved. You need to get everyone's opinion. But one of the things to be careful of, because it can become a double-edged sword, is the leadership needs to define where the business direction is, how the ERP solution will support that, as well as get user input. But the users cannot define the strategic direction. So be careful not to align too much on the user, but also how this new direction will impact the user, so you get acceptance. Acceptance is the biggest issue. And don't misunderstand training as change management, because it's not as simple as that.
Let's jump over to the third common mistake, and that is ignoring data migration challenges.
And I'll start there. Garbage in, garbage out, as we all know that expression. but the migration of the data needs to be done. It's translated or it's converted into the new system. So a lot of times you'll see that there'll be a different chart of account that you'll restructure. And there's different ways and architectures that would require that you also do the data translation. And then you need to take the opportunity to cleanse your data. There's no other better time to do the data cleansing. It can be a significant effort depending on how poor your data is at the point in time. And if you're integrating from multiple ERP systems into one because you've got multiple business units or via acquisition, don't underestimate the amount of effort that would be involved in getting that cleaned up.
Yeah. Nathan, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think John nailed it. From a positive standpoint, it is, like he mentioned, it is the best time to do some housekeeping. These types of projects are a great time to analyze not only the data but the processes. From the data standpoint, I will say too that for an ERP migration, data migration can be really expensive or it can be, reasonable. It just depends on how much data you want to bring in. I'll say for us, typically we recommend folks bring in no more than the past year of transactional data just to true everything up. Some folks want to bring in their whole history, and it all really depends on will you have access to your old system beforehand or after the migration for archival purposes? If not, there are other steps where you can maybe migrate that data as a second phase after you bring it in. This is really one of the areas that folks should pay the most attention to when they're looking at ERP migrations is the data migration piece of this, to get a clear understanding of how much cost is going to be involved, and make sure the data is clean, and then analyzing the chart of accounts. Will those structures change? There's just a whole lot. This is one of the most important areas of the migration that you need to look at.
Thanks for that, Nathan. Okay, let's move on to number 4, underestimating training needs. John, talk about training.
Well, I'll go in this path, and then Nathan's going to add some to this. I'm sure he'll have some great insight there. But what I've seen from my experience is there's really an issue of training, and then there's change management. And change management is really how well the organization will be able to adapt to this transition to the new software. And transitioning to new software is not just to replace it; it's to improve upon automation, business processes. Maybe it's adapting to the new business model. But all of that comes into play for user acceptance and how well you understand their wants and needs, and then also in the training. So in the case of where a user may provide 10 steps in their day-to-day activities, well, you really want to do automation and adding the software. So let's say you reduce that to 4 steps. Well, if you don't explain why, not only just train, but why you're reducing 10 steps to 4 and how that impacts them, then you're going to get resistance. And the user is going to think that the system doesn't work because they're missing the other 6 steps. So training, user adoption, understanding and explaining why. And then the last one is what's in it for them. How does it impact them? You don't want to scare them off to say, well, God, my job just got simpler. Are you going to lay me off? Do you need less people now? So you have to be very careful about how you explain and go through this process with the user base.
Yeah, Nathan, anything to add with that?
Yeah, I think John, great point there. The why is so important. I think it gives people some clarity, and that's really what you want when it comes to training. I mean, think about, you're changing someone's day-to-day process, and that's a huge thing when you're trying to do your job and then you're also trying to implement new software. It's not an easy thing. These ERP migrations are not simple or easy. The other thing I want to just add to this is that, make sure you understand what sort of training options your reseller, your partners offers to you. Is it virtual training? Is it on premise? Maybe you want someone to come on site and train. think about some of those options. You want to understand for the virtual and the remote training, is it video based? Is it a classroom type format? How long do they have access to the training? Because a lot of times it takes weeks or months to train someone on a new process. And then lastly, I'll just say, getting back to the format, just try to, during the evaluation process, try to get a flavor of what that training really looks like. Try to get some samples of that, go through some of the first parts of the training and try to understand, how's this going to work for us as an organization.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too. It's not one and done. So how are you going to train new employees that come on board, or if employees leave and you need to replace them, how will they be trained? A lot of processes are done by train the trainer. So the provider will train specific people to be software or be subject matter experts, and they will in turn train their others. A lot of the newer systems have built-in training programs. That's either video or very, very well-written documentation as well. And a lot of us encourage that our users learn how to use these training systems and learn how to look up and answer their own questions and be somewhat self-sufficient. That will lead to better adoption and ease any anxiety that a user would have, knowing that they can get answers.
Yeah, and one tip I'll add too is as you're going through the training, and as a user, as I'll say an AP user, as they go through their daily workflow, you can put yourself ahead by sort of documenting each step that the user is taking and sort of create for lack of a better term, like a user Bible. Sometimes if you have things that are unique to your business or your process, just take the time. You're going through it anyway, so take the time to document things within your training. And that way you can add your own organizational points that you need into the training that's provided by the reseller or the publisher.
All right. Yeah. Really good feedback, guys. The fifth one that we're going to look at is overlooking integration with other systems. To me, this kind of goes hand in hand with ignoring data migration challenges, but let's talk about just specifically overlooking integration with other systems. Nathan, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think in the past, what you've had I'll call it with some of the legacy ERP systems is you have, software that's installed a lot of times on a server. And then if you have add-on software, maybe the accounting software does its thing, but you need some operational software, or you need some CRM or some field service or something else. You'll have other software that is connected to, but it's separate software where, you run, okay, I'm doing my accounting function. I'll run my accounting software. Now I need to operate sales and marketing. So I'm going to hop into my CRM system. And so they're sort of separate, but connected in that legacy model. Now things have changed because everything with true SaaS solutions are now in the browser. So the integrations look different these days. A lot of times all the system looks the same. It's all built in the browser. So you're not sort of switching back and forth between applications like you might in a legacy system. These days, folks want a holistic type system. They want a software platform, if you will, that sort of runs the whole business. So when you're evaluating ERP software, it's important to understand, is it true SaaS, where it's all based in the browser and it's designed to be, accessed from anywhere? Or is it still that client server model where you're going to install this on your server or have it hosted, and then you're going to connect other softwares to it? It's important to understand that model first so that you then can define the third-party software that you might need. And that's where, overlooking software might come into place. Maybe in your old system, you've got gaps where you're using Excel or you're using some other tool, and it's not a part of your system. It's sort of outside the system, and you're doing some manual extract, transform, and load operations to try and make things work. These days, things are designed to work together. So, don't think just because you're working a particular function now in Excel or some third party that you have to continue doing that. Keep your eyes open to those third parties.
John?
Yeah, I think that's great. I mentioned automation. Well, that's part of it now. There are multiple systems out there. It's grown because providers have offered uh, solutions that fill a lot of these gaps, or they replace manual activities like Nathan mentioned using Excel, but they don't all talk to each other, and you lack the automation or the workflow between the systems. With the new modern architectures, true SaaS solutions, not an on-premise that's hosted, but a true SaaS solution that has open APIs where they all can connect, you will really benefit from the workflow and the automation between systems, which will can dramatically increase your productivity. So that's something to look for. Do you have a true SaaS solution? Does it have an open API, or are there pre-built connectors between these solutions where you can gain that efficiency through the automation and the connectivity?
All right. So number 6, we're almost there to the finish line. So number 6, choosing price over functionality is a big mistake. Nathan, talk about choosing price over functionality.
Yeah, I mean, it's common in human nature for us to seek out the best deal, and I think what happens sometimes is folks will choose the least expensive software based on price, and then it ends up costing them more in the long run through either lost time, manual processes, and you can do the math on this stuff. You can calculate how long it might take someone to process their daily work in an old system versus a new system and compare. And you get to a situation where you might buy some software that's maybe it's not even GAAP compliant, meaning it's not really, your records aren't really auditable, and it's not designed to scale. That's an important point too, is if your business is growing, you certainly want to plan for the future and not just shop on price. ERP is not a commodity. It's an investment in your infrastructure.
Yeah, Nathan, you're absolutely right. Sometimes it may be a bargain, but if it's too good to be true, well, the old saying. Well, guys, thank you for joining me. Nathan, John, I really do appreciate your time today, and I hope the listeners got some good insight out of everything that you were talking about today. I certainly did, and I look forward to doing another one of these podcasts with you. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.